Hey. Okay. Because this is kind of concerns something I'm gonna be talking with Oliver Semiogog tomorrow night about. Um, James, right? James Allsup and Sargon of Akkad. They're having their disagreement, but this is something that actually has come up with Sargon that I've touched on. The ramifications of genomics it's like the ramifications of gravity. There's going to be just as there's economic laws, the actual economic laws that are absolutely real. It's simply that humans can call them laws because they are consistent enough. This is why your healthcare system in Britain will consistently fail. No matter what reforms you make, it will keep failing, and it's because there's a number of economic laws that make it so. That's why the medical system that America had really post World War II, before really about the 60s or 70s, that's where we started to see sort of the best of it pan out, as in relationship to how not advanced technology was. But it's also because America has such a free market in medicine, we do have so many advancements put into the market. And the more the government has gotten involved, the slower the advancements come. It gets more complicated. There's all, that's its own video, its own series of videos with Yaron Brooks explaining it far better. Genomics is going to have its own ramifications. So far, the liberalists, the centrists of both the right and the left, the centrists, all these people, they're all like, oh no, race is so super hokey dokey, that doesn't matter, we're all pink underneath, our blood runs red, it's blue inside, red when it's gushing out after somebody shoots you with a gun. And by statistic, no matter if by invite or by capture and enslavement you have a population from the sub-equatorial African continent, it is more likely you will have been shot by them if they are in the first world, if they're in the Eurosphere. This is just this really odd thing, being one society went out of its way to invite them. The other society had more than enough room that these people actually lived entirely unto themselves, and then actually kept coming into communities of the majority. So didn't with isolation and building their own economy, didn't want to stay there. And so and then once they're in some area, suddenly they're mad at the majority community, but yet the majority community consistently for over 100 or more years would record that there's a remarkably high amount of criminal activity among that group. And I'm not talking about the Chinese and the Japanese, because they've been here for quite a bit of time. So Sargon has to deal with the fact that Shantytown is in London and Shantytown is in Atlanta. At some point you all are going to have to deal with it. And the beautiful part about, I'm looking at this, I do take a kind of, I sort of get like the idea of why I like Jim Medicare so much. Is, for me, my only issue with Jim Medicare is he doesn't post enough. it's almost, I wish there was like a daily gym, where Jim just is like, can you believe this shit? you know. But I like that he saves it up. He builds up the pressure and then suddenly releases it in a focused blast of high-powered plasma, and just melts it in front of everyone and on the internet. I like watching the fight against the identitarian movement, the desperate fight. If only we could get these young white men to understand there's nothing that is white. There is only non-white people, and they're okay, and you should treat them cool, but just don't post those memes that make them so triggered, if you know what I mean, because they'll break all the windows and they'll shoot me. And the blood that runs, blue inside and red will gush all over the place, and my equality will spill out of the bullet holes. It's just at some point everybody's got to just deal with this. What we are dealing with constantly is not saying, oh, that's fascinating, you're violent. And people being like, oopa doopa, why you say that about he was gonna be a good boy and go to college. And then you literally like drop 1,000 pounds of stone on him in front of everybody. Just crush him to fucking death. Brains, blood, shit everywhere. You do this enough times, you will see that fucking murder rate go down. I'm like, hey, I could be, I'm not long for the world. There's one person, I guess my grandfather did live a good long time. My grandma lived my mom and dad didn't live that long. So, I never know when I'm going to kick it. So my whole mentality is, why not offer the perspective of complete, well, what if I were to think, like, if I have an example, what would God do? See, Jesus would have a much more creative approach. That's why it's very difficult to match. You can't match the Jesus, Don't fuck with the Jesus, But God, you could always think, like, wait, I know God might. God would crush this person with 1,000 pounds of stone in front of everyone, and then everyone would see, don't do that. See, you go full Duterte, you go full Pinochet libertarian. I like the whole idea of Pinochet libertarian. That it's like, oh no, you see, for about 3 or 4 years, you make sure that when you, like, chuck the person out of a helicopter on, and live stream it, then that everybody gets, like, fuck you if you have a problem with this. This motherfucker did this shit, and now they're getting chucked out of a fucking helicopter. And fuck you. And you could take that shit and shove it. Nobody gives a damn. And eventually people will stop thinking somebody will give a damn about all this. Oh, blah, 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 I'm gonna burn a garbage can, and because that is how the world still works. There are people who really, I thought it was fascinating how Ry Dawson, I still remember this, like, what did the Japanese think about this and that and this and Abe and blah blah, and he's like, the Japanese are simply not political. That's just not, they don't really think about stuff like that. They just don't discuss stuff like that. It's not really important to them. And then reading Thomas Sowell and how he got into how specifically, like, German Americans, like weird groups of Germans will not advocate for group politics. For some reason it's just not important. They will group together and do something as a German community. They will speak German for 2 to 3 generations, but they won't really do something politically. Like, stay out of we have laws about people like you because you're one of the non-Germans in our German area, And my grandfather said this about Jasper, with the Jasper Dutch. There were things along these lines. That this idea of, well, we don't bother people. But we do have our way we do things. And that there's not many groups that, like in America, there's groups like that. And then there's groups that are extremely political. One that Thomas Sowell identified, and once he pointed out, I was like, oh, well, shit, I hadn't thought about that, was to some degree Italians, but that's sort of vanished. I mean, nobody runs as an Italian-American. Talks about, oh, and we did this, and when we did that, and Italians striving, and, you know, but the Irish, into my memory, you know, the idea of, like, you know, the striving Irish, you know, working class Irish person who's come up out of poverty and is trying to do good for the old neighborhood and stuff, that these are identifiable things for generations, identifiable traits for generations. Genomics is touching on this, is getting into these issues, and the alternative right, they know about this stuff. The people who are doing the research and publishing this stuff, they know how dangerous this is, but there's no way around it. It's simply the data. The laws of behavioral genetics, the 5 laws of behavioral genetics, if you don't know what this is, you don't know what it is. And it's laws, they're laws, and he makes clear very quickly, this is not some kooky, McFooky pseudoscience. This is the Human Genome Project, motherfuckers. And you all need to stop acting like your theorems matter. And it was really one of the things I was listening to when I was listening to James also talk about Sargon, and he said, oh, he doesn't read enough Locke. And there was this part, this part of my mind that just thought, fuck you, nigga. just remembering, like, how that's an answer. That is an answer to a philosophical argument in San Francisco, California, when I grew up there in the 90s. Fuck you, nigga. Bam! You were trying to make some point, and next thing you know, someone throws a 40 and somebody hits you in the face, you know? Fuck you, nigga. And you don't know why some West Side niggas and Point niggas and somebody was talking some dumb shit about this hood or that hood. Nobody's even from these neighborhoods, and you got socked in the mouth. It's just like, Sargon, you don't realize shantytown is shantytown. Shantytown people understand shantyness and Shantyville and Shantytech, and they're shantytastic, and until they put it way behind them, they haven't. Until you can never detect that about them ever, it's still there, and that's obviously what is the case with Londanistan. None of these people are Britons. These people are not British. I'm sorry. It's over. It's so over. And you all are being very British about it. They're doing what comes very naturally to you. You are being very rational, but because you know what this is, because what would rationally, if we were to finally solve this problem, what would rationally you do? Oh, well, I'm sorry, Britain has a long history of rationally solving their problem with other motherfuckers' behavior and or existence on a piece of territory they wanted. It's very rational what they would do. And as time went on, they started being, we're just soaked in blood. It's better to kind of do this in a way that we all actually make money on the deal, and really that is quite rational, and they figured that out. And now other people have figured out, well, they've come to the point where it's just rational enough for them to come to your territory and leech off of you and exploit you and then laugh in your face. And you all are being humiliated. And that's one of the most, remember, that's the key element here. You British people are being humiliated by the criminal element, because you won't crush them alive in front of their family. You won't tie them up in chicken wire and roll them down a hill on a live stream. You won't do it. You won't beat them. You won't just beat them with batons and beat their legs until their legs are soft and purple. Because they'll never forget this. They and all their whole neighborhood, they'll never forget it. But in that, you will solve your problem, because they will understand that. They will understand that bullshit's not an option anymore. You start crushing these people, and they'll understand. The devious will understand that. That's why they don't like it. That's why they don't like prison. Because it's completely understood. Oh, you fucking robbed somebody at gunpoint, then you were put away for hella years, and you're mad. You don't like that. There's a bunch of people, they don't like that. They don't think they should have been put away for so many years. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, the likelihood you would have just kept being violent is actually extraordinarily high. We know this. There's actually a lot of, there's real science on specifically that. On, oh, you let somebody be deviant, and they just keep being deviant. It's shocking. And you find out that you'll catch them for only 1 out of 4 or 5 things that they've done. It's really fascinating how that works, and that they maybe aren't really high reasoning enough to actually think, maybe I needed to be separated from normal people who wanted to have normal lives, and weak humans, women, children, the old. I needed to be separated from weaker humans because I would have just preyed upon them. We simply won't come to terms that's obviously the issue with most of the species still. I mean, we look at killing rates throughout the world. I mean, we know what we see. Nobody's making this shit up. People know what a fucking basura is. They know what a landfill could be. Where's all the fucking rubbish? In the canals and the streets all over the fucking place. So, until the centrists, the liberalists, the left, and the center-right take on the fact that IQ is actually one of the only things we understand about human cognition, that we have a pretty we have this bizarre amount of quantitative capacity for, such that we've whittled this down to just simply geometric skill puzzles, that actually, in fact, a lot of people should really worry about playing online games, because very likely these are IQ tests. If Darth Vader mode, that's what I would do. Full destro, I would be playing with all of your heads. I would have this little camera looking right into your eyes as you're playing Fortnite. I would be in your fucking mind. All these people, the virtual, whoo boy, oh that one, that's an experiment. That's going to be one of the most fascinating of experiments. When people start falling asleep with those motherfuckers on, that's going to be interesting. Because something's going to... So we're going to come up with something. We're going to come up with something interesting. An easy way to make you fall asleep easier. Humans that tend to have, say, a little less muscle mass, more adiposity, higher anxiety, more cortisol. they'll gladly try this new thing I heard about, the virtual reality goggles, and you just plug it into my phone. It's like a virtual reality sleep aid. Because you see, pills, brain pills for anxiety, that's expensive. Exercise, that comes for free. Building that muscle mass, keeping that muscle mass up so you have enough testosterone in your blood serum that you're confident and that it's easier for you to fall asleep because you're not at such a high anxiety level. You could turn the alarm clock that's going on in your head while you're awake off. But you see, people can't do that. When those brain pills get a little too expensive, or that we start really finding out that we shouldn't be feeding a lot of people brain pills, that we're going to probably use, all kinds of new methods, and those virtual reality goggles will be out there. That's full destro. That's what I would do. So people got to start figuring out. You see, full destro, and you don't want, you see, they picked Martin Luther King because behind him was a nigger with a gun, and that's me, Malcolm X. And they pick, people like Ben Shapiro, because somewhere, it's, there's people, there's a fucking Bulbasaur and a nigger with a gun, and an army of Christians, and ANCAPs. So it's, people want to have, an option needs to start becoming more realistic. People need to start becoming realistic, and you see, that's why nobody wants to talk to Stefan Molyneux. He's not intellectually dark web enough. No. He's not. He says those things that you can't talk about. He's in the gloom web. He's in the extra double dark web. He's in the anti-lectual dark web. See, he's not a real intellectual. He's only talking to people exactly about what we can understand about behavioral genetics, genomics, and what the future holds. And same for J.F. Gary P. No, guy like that can't take a guy like that serious, because what he's talked about, he's writing about in his book, is already starting to happen in the news. People starting to play around with the possibility of erasing, say, Alzheimer's in utero. That's already come up. And so all this cute stuff about liberalists, and we have to understand what free speech really means, and what is hate speech, and is there really hate? There's a whole bunch of people need to be told, oh, motherfucker, I get to say what I want. They'd be like, oh, but you see, but I have feelings and I like to cry. And you'd be like, bam. Cry over that. Get the fuck away from me, commie. And at some point, it's probably going to come to this, where it's and 1,000 pounds of stone. Or commies, do you want who's next up? Who's next up? And they're going they're going to be like, we will totally let you say what you want. We will empty our pants now, and we will figure our shit out, and we will leave you people alone. And a lot of people don't get, like, one of the things about this that I think about is, because people don't really know about the Peasants' Revolt and how it doesn't make sense as a true popular revolt that just happened, that it obviously was very, very, very well organized, and that almost all popular revolts since the 1300s appear to have been organized by people who took various religious orders' models as the way that they structured their way of passing messages and such, till eventually it becomes openly fraternal societies and secret societies, as we call them now. Because of this, people think, oh yeah, the people get together and they rise up and then they take back free speech, you know. And it's like, no. The people are low, degenerate beings. They're flawed, fallen things. And they will always start humping holes in trees and drinking themselves to sleep. If you know, you at some point have some people who understand there is more to life than this. And they whip the order. They make the order understand, motherfucker, you never know where we're gonna come from. You will never know where we'll appear from. And that they eventually make a deal, because they realize, like, they're afraid, and they would also rather be down with you, because who else? You guys are organized. So some of the right now is starting to become something that's becoming sort of acceptable, and the center wants to discuss with the intellectual dark web all their ideas, and they want to start, oh, these liberalists, they are just simply, they're the fine tradition of liberals, and they're just all, say, free speech, Gamergate, blah, 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 you know, and this is just out of hand, all of this has gotten out of hand, you know, and I really am like, I'm at full, kind of the full Medicare stage, where I'm like, you do your thing. No, do your thing. Don't worry. Nigga's got a gun. You know, I'll break their jaw. You know, it's like, you know, I get to say what I want. Oh, well, blah, 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 bam. Oh, you can't get that close to me. You know, like Sting said. Don't stand so close to me and yell some crazy shit like that with your fucking communist flagpole shit. You know, what do you think? Mama didn't raise no chump. And so, that's a beauty of being an American. You know, an ass whooping is equal opportunity in America, and it's just that right now if you do it and you are of a certain hue, it's a hate crime. If you do it with frequency, with another hue, you need a special program to help you with all of the dominance and hatred of the supremacy and such like. I have no real problem with this idea of identity politics, mostly because it has to be discussed, because everybody who's non-white that I grew up with understands themselves to be non-white, and they really, really see themselves as a different group of people in a way that, I mean, I really just simply don't think polite white liberals get. And I grew up with lots and lots of different people, and it wasn't that it was an animosity. They just understood themselves to be very, very different, and to have totally different traditions. And especially when it came to the Chinese, and this is incredibly important, that when reading Shakespeare, and this is very important, what are you talking about, the Trinity? What do you mean Trinity? That was quite a discussion for me to explain to a whole group of public school students, from the agnostic, raised on Greek myths, but from Catholic school, half-black kid, to explain to them what the Trinity was, because the teacher kind of could, but still didn't have it dialed in. That was fascinating. Yeah. All right. That's all I got. I ran on a little bit long. Later.